Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Cope. We talked about how the action is between the objects and how agile is mostly a local optimization.
I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you like today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello everyone, and hello with me. I have Cope. Actually, I think that's how most people call you these days, in the
Yep.
last couple of years. So welcome. And before we jump into introduction and everything, I want to show a little bit on where we are. That is always a little bit nice. So I'm here in Belgium, and we're going to Denmark, if I'm correct. Terne, is that how I should pronounce it? I'm not sure.
Kurdistan.
Kazakhstan, and it's close to the sea, as we can see, on a very small part of the island, I would say. Well, actually, is it an island? No, it's not an island, right?
Technically, no, we're on a peninsula here. I mean,
Right.
Denmark is, of course, also comprises a lot of islands, but we're on the one part that's physically connected to the rest of Europe.
Right. So, yeah, it's always interesting to think about that because it seems like that little part out. Let's bring us back, of course, on the screen. Before we jump into the questions, what do you want people to know? What, if you just a small kind of introduction for yourself, for the few people that don't know you in the agile community.
No, I guess what our history goes back, just I guess knowing each other's names to probably the late 1990s. But I've been working in software since since about when? About the 1970s, formally working in software. I mean, my first program goes back to probably 1968.
Wow.
Educated as an electrical engineer.
Because informatics didn't exist as an education in back then, I would say. I think.
Oh yes, I mean, yeah, there was a computer science department, and in fact, it was its own school at the University of Wisconsin. So it was not a department of engineering or something like that. But I elected to start in electrical engineering, and after 5 years of electrical engineering, then moved into a graduate program in computer science. Though most of the courses I took during my engineering education were in fact computer science courses, and a lot of the courses I took during my CS program were in fact advanced engineering courses. But so I mixed the two up.
And what was considered advanced engineering at that time?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, it was a I would even say an emerging field. I mean, computing had been around since since the 1950s, and people there on campus were playing at computers. I was working for Charlie Davidson on campus, and he built the first computer there in Wisconsin, I think, in the 1950s.
Wow.
So it had been around. It was quite a mature program, robust program. Some interesting professors like E.F. Moore, as in Moore and Mealy Machines,
Okay. Wow.
and Charlie, who I worked for. It was a pretty good program back then. And then worked at Bell Laboratories for 20 years or so. Somewhere along the line, I got my my PhD and my doctorate from there in Belgium, from via Universiteit Brussels.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I do remember talking about that, but that's or was already skipping my mind. Indeed.
And did a lot of research in Bell Laboratories post 1990 on what made organizations tick, development organizations, and of course a lot of them were software development organizations. And kind of independently, but not independently, was one of the founders of the pattern discipline. patterns were something that Ward Cunningham and Kent Beck were trying to use as a last gasp method to save small talk.
That's
no, I mean, no, I mean, it really was. I mean, Ward said this. I mean, we need to do something to save small talk. So they kind of moved into the design space and brought people together to form a community of patterns folks. And I really disappointed Kent because I went off and I started working on organizational patterns. And Kent said, well, you know, patterns are about small talk programming, but, you know, we still love you, Cope. And of course, patterns didn't save small talk, but organizational patterns went on to be something quite honorable and with a lot of impact. They had a big impact on extreme programming. I mean, Kent himself has said that. They had a big impact on Scrum. And so I kind of became a Scrum person. Oh, I don't know, about 18, 19 years ago.
And you, of all the topics you talked about, you also wrote books about them, right?
Yes.
And let's bring them on. This is the couple of ones that I've known, or at least I didn't have everyone. I didn't even know that you wrote a second edition or a second part to Patterns, Languages of Programming Design. I had the first one. I remember that Advanced C++. I don't think I've read it, but I do remember seeing it. But this one, the one you just talked about, organizational patterns, I did devour. I still have it somewhere back there. So.
Yeah, I think Advanced C++ just went out of print after, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years or something like that.
Wow. But, and out of print at that moment, I would say, then the print was larger. I mean, today, I don't know how it is with English books and with those kind of books, but I know in Belgium, the Dutch books, it's like, yeah, it goes out of print with very limited amount of copies.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure it's technically out of print because the way the publishers work now is on-demand, one-by-one book publication. They have what are essentially big Xerox machines, and they feed it the PDF, and it produces a bound book. So they can fill orders of one cost effectively. So maybe they're still doing that for this book. I don't know.
I think for for some of the books, they just have an agreement with the author. Okay, we'll print 100 copies, and then we'll just do a rerun or whatever. And then they say, hey, this is the second or the third time that we do a rerun, and that gives people a little impression. Oh, it's a lot of books, but like you say, it could be just for 10 or for one, because that's how they can cost effectively do it. And actually, I think in some things it's good because we avoid printing thousands of books that then have to be thrown away. So that's
yes,
in that sense good. But it doesn't mean that thousands of books have been printed at that moment, I would say.
Well, I don't know. Maybe most books in our field should be thrown away. There's an awful lot of bad stuff out there. Jeez.
Well, that's the other thing. It's probably become way too early to publish a book, and yeah, that's indeed sometimes also not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the least amount of time I've spent on any book was 6 years, and it goes all the way up to 12 years. And I just had a friend who said, I want to write a book about X. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. And I encouraged him. And the book was out in 9 months. I was like, well, wait a minute. I mean, that's kind of a good conference paper. But one of the things that Doug McElroy advised me about, Doug was a colleague of mine at Bell Laboratories, is go for publication in the archival literature. He says that most stuff that's published in proceedings is wrong. Most books are wrong. He says, strive to really go for the juried archival literature. And I mean, that becomes a labor of love and a life's work. And so, I mean, a book isn't just something that you pop out because it would be fun. I mean, the old days was, you know, for people to make money. I don't think anyone's making a lot of money off of books these days, except for, you know, one or two who are lucky. But yeah, the quality of book publication has really become sad.
Yeah. It's well, for me, it's also if I read a book and I have to really think hard and understand it, it feels for me that the author hasn't done the work. For me, the author has to do the work, and it doesn't mean that every book has to be easy to read, but sometimes it's really like the language, whatever the storyline, I don't know, it's kind of hard, and I have to do a lot of work to understand some of that stuff.
I agree and disagree. So you're right. I mean, if it's for writing style or organization or things like that, I agree with you. But I mean, the books that I really like are obscure Japanese philosophy books by, sensei who have been dead for 300 years. And yeah, I mean, I do struggle to get my mind around them, mainly because of the cultural rift. And so I have to get my mind around that. That's where I'm going to learn something. I mean, if my mind has to work hard, then I'm going to learn something.
That I agree at that level as well. I mean, some of the things are hard to grasp. And yeah, if you write about, I don't know, nuclear science, yeah, if people really want to understand it and a way to use it, it's not going to be written at a level that a toddler can understand. I mean, it might be good to do that to make sure you understand yourself, but then it won't be useful for doctorate students or whatever. So that of course, at some level, if things are hard, it's hard. But still, yeah, I feel in a lot of cases that authors, like you say, didn't spend enough time to really make it understandable, and like you say, sometimes writing something and then being happy with it instead of just working on it.
Yeah, my concern is they don't take the time. It's not so much about making it understandable, but about knowing what they're talking about. They don't do their homework, and there are things that are well known in the literature that just totally escape a lot of these authors. Obviously missing citations, and it's clear that it's almost clear that they're not working in the field. But I don't think that's just authors. I think that's a casualty of our modern industry, is that people are very individualistic. The education system has let us down in establishing foundations. People just don't understand the system principles or even the deep underlying technical principles of the kind of stuff they're talking about. And yes, it's hard in our discipline because it is based in technology. I mean, we use things that are based in very complex circuit designs, but also in the human sciences like sociology and psychology. So it takes an unbelievably broad foundation to be able to say something meaningful about anything that has a lot of leverage in our industry. It's easy to publish a book that says, okay, here's how you do the daily stand-up, or here's how you do CRC cards, or here's how you do user stories. And there's a lot of those books around, and it's hard to be wrong because they don't say anything. But if you take them to the next step about, what is the underlying psychology that I need to be looking at? People just do not have that backing. And so, I think that this has really slowed down progress in the industry. I mean, there is really nothing new in our industry. Can you name a single new programming language feature in the past 40 years? All of the organizational things are deja vu. I mean, we've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, and the same bad ideas keep coming up about once every 7 years. I mean, I've been around long enough, and maybe you've been around long enough. You've seen this. You see these cycles.
Well, just yesterday, was it yesterday? I think this week at least, I heard some news that in Europe they want to force every employee to do time registration, and I'm like, hello, we know that doesn't help a lot of other stuff. We should start trusting people, and I can see for some, and I didn't even understand what problem they were trying to solve with it. But it was interesting that it might solve a problem in some industries for some people, but why would you force it for every employee for everywhere around Europe? that feels very strange. And in Belgium, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. Like, really? And yeah, that's insane. And that, yeah, it's just one example of how sometimes indeed we see things that are trying, and we seem to go back and forward to some of the yeah patterns
Yep.
that yeah in many different kind of things. And it also feels that, well, maybe it's a side effect of having all these books and other things, is that who's still reading? And like you say, there's a lot of bad books from the past as well, but there are some good ideas, some other things that people haven't read anymore and don't know it anymore, and then don't know that, well, we solved some of these problems already before. We might need to adapt it a little bit because things have changed, but at least the basic patterns below it haven't changed.
Yes, and I mean, those considerations have figured very strongly in my career. I mean, this is why we created the pattern community, is that there were people out talking about and celebrating novelty and selling novelty. And we knew that there were broad solutions, particularly to system level problems, the kind of stuff that you're not going to learn about in an undergraduate degree. You're not going to be able to pick up a book and read about. And this is where Ward Cunningham was really brilliant. He's one of the people for whom I have some of the highest respect in the industry, where he said, you know, I have all these things that I do know how to do in Smalltalk, but I can't write them in a paper and take them to a conference because they're not new. And conferences reward novelty. So we need a body of literature that celebrates the important things at work that are known to the craftspeople, and that we can communicate and share to the upcoming generations, because they're not going to get them out of a book, and they're not going to get them, you know, going to university, because they're rewarding, you know, what's your recent patent? Oh, I have a visitor out here. I don't know if I can show you this. This is a little bit stretching the camera. I hope I can do this. There, can you see him?
Yes, barely. Yeah, just walked out.
Yeah, that's our friendly neighborhood fox. We also have a friendly neighborhood kitten, and
so they, yeah, because I didn't jump into that, but from the map that I showed, the location you're living at, it feels like not many houses are around, so it feels like a very rural, I would say.
We're essentially in the middle of a nature preserve.
Wow.
So yeah, and very close to the sea. The terrain is sand dunes, so like mini mountains of sand dunes that are built up here by the sea over the years, and it's a beautiful, beautiful nature area.
And that invites, of course, animals to walk around and bring you a visit, basically.
Yeah, this fox is a little more tame than the usual animal here, but
yeah, true. I can see that. Well, let's start already, because it's a really nice introduction. But let's start with that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
So I don't remember what I answered when we first started talking about this.
That's also not so important. Let's see.
Yeah, that's not so important. And again, you know, feeding into a theme I maybe want to underscore in our conversation today is that there's a big part of me that's into, and I have to be a little careful about what word I attach to this, because it gives people, you know, this sense of weirdness. But there's a part of me that's philosophical or spiritual. I mean, to the point where, I mean, I've actually spent some time in seminary. Wow. And you know, the spiritual part of my life, and my relationship with God is very important to me. Don't worry, I'm not a right wing. You know, I'm not going to beat you with a Bible. I'm not one of those.
It feels more
Well,
like, well, the if I don't want to go too much into that part, but what you said feels more like, okay, the true understanding what that means, much more than the people saying, hey, this is what the Bible says and you have to do this. That's how I heard it more, the way you explained it.
yes, and much deeper. For example, we'll probably talk a lot about design today, and I think the traditional kind of canonical American Christian view of design is man having authority and command and control over nature. Whereas the Eastern view is humankind harmonizing with nature. And so I'm very deeply invested in Eastern literature and things like the Dokyo, the Tao Te Ching, and a few more, less known advisors. And this becomes very broad. It has its tentacles into everything. I mean, well, like I said earlier, I'm a Scrum person. Don't worry, I'm not going to beat you with that Bible either, because I know there's a lot of people who are about that. But that has very deep Japanese roots. And if you go back and look at the roots from which this came, they go back through some work by a couple of folks, one of whom was named Stahl, who published this in 1990, which was 5 years before Ken and Jeff published anything. They took their roots from Takeuchi-san and Nonaka Sensei, and they got this from a variety of Japanese companies, Honda and NEC and Canon, and I mean, usually Toyota is the one that gets tagged for this, because what Toyota did is they took the word Kaizen and they branded it, and they kind of branded this notion of process. And indeed, yes, I mean, they were using these same ideas that Takeuchi-san and Nonaka Sensei were talking about, but the ideas go back much deeper. And if we take them back into Toyota, we find that Toyota-san, the inventor of Toyota, in fact, was a fairly deep student of Buddhism. And a lot of these principles of harmony and of human harmony and of teamwork and of harmony between you and the thing you are making work their way into the Toyota culture and the Toyota way, which in turn inspired these things that yada, 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 eventually, will lead to Scrum. So when people talk about Agile or Scrum, it's like, it's not, should we use estimation points or how long should the daily Scrum be? It's going back to these deep principles of how do human beings think? How do human beings work together in society to work efficiently and with joy and serve the rest of the world? So it's at that level that I have this investment. And it's even a little difficult for me to articulate this, because it's like, what is this thing that people don't know about me? And it's like it's a separate thing, called philosophy or called religion. It's not separate. All of these things interact very, very deeply and very powerfully. And one of the things that worries me about our current community is the absence of that integration from a lot of what I see in practice and just in casual interaction.
It's like you say, a lot of people focus much more on what I would call the semantics, and indeed how long should the stand up or whatever, and it's never about that. I mean, it's yeah, that's okay. It's yeah, I fully agree. It's much, well, for me, like with agile, the manifesto is much more important. The first page is much more important about some of these things, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, is much more important than a lot of the books written about Scrum or Kanban or whatever, because then they go too much more in the specifics. So yeah, and that is for me also indeed the feeling I have with patterns and pattern languages, about, okay, we want to describe some of the things so that people can understand it, and typically I would say apply it in another place. that nobody thought about at the moment that we written it.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it. That's how I feel patterns. I don't know how it was for you because you were there at, I would say, at the start. So was that the intention at that moment, or how did that start? Or why did you join? Maybe because it might be different for other people.
One of the books that I'm hope to write someday, one of the 20 or 30 books, is a history of the pattern discipline. Because when we first came together, there were 7 of us. I very carefully took notes, and I wrote down people's motivations, and it was fascinating. And different people had different motivations for everything. I told you words, right? And I want to be able to talk about things that are important, but I can't publish. Mine was just, wow, this is breaking outside any notion of method or outside of, the formula that we're told for inheritance or Liskov substitutability principle or coupling and cohesion. And I had an inkling then, I don't know how well I could articulate it to myself, but I had an inkling then of some things that are important that in fact only now are really starting to come into crisp focus. So for example, what were you taught in software engineering? So you're doing design of a system. How do you make a system maintainable? What's the number one principle? Everyone teaches it. Doesn't matter what paradigm you're using. What's the number one principle of design? Right? You're taught about coupling and cohesion, right? Mm-hmm. And what we want to do is make the parts as independent as possible. Well, if you look at Deming hung out with this guy named Russ Ackoff, and Ackoff said the maintainability and evolvability of a system is proportional to the degree that the parts are tightly coupled. It's exactly the opposite. And what patterns are about is the relationships between the parts. Now, there were some early object-oriented people who understood this, like, what's her name from Xerox PARC? She was a big name in object orientation, worked on, I think, published some of the early smalltalk books. And her name escapes me. There were 2 of them. There was a guy and a woman, and they both worked at Xerox PARC. And what she said about objects is it always happens somewhere else. That is, the action is between the objects. It's not in the objects. And so there's this whole notion of betweenness. And I think that's what attracted me to patterns, is it was focusing on this betweenness. It's what the Japanese call ma, or space. The thing between the objects. And that's where the action is. Because that starts to get into notions of architecture, and architecture starts to get into notions of beauty and human perception. And a lot of other really deep, interesting technical things. So I think that's what attracted me to it. And the reason it attracted me is because I had been looking at those things in object orientation for several years, and particularly in C++, and saying, well, okay, it's not about all these standard, things that Uncle Bob is talking about. Uncle Bob and I have this love-hate relationship. I mean, we're really good drinking buddies, but we'll fight about anything. So things like the solid, his solid stuff, I think is pure crap. Because that's all about classes and the relationships between classes and inheritance hierarchies. And I was like, no, it's about objects. This is called object-oriented programming. And patterns were more of that ilk, more of what is the living, breathing system rather than the blueprint. So,
Which
solid
typically would be useful in other languages or other kind of things. You don't need object orientation for it, I would say, for patterns.
Yeah, well, the other thing, of course, is I was a multi-paradigm guy. I mean, one of my books was multi-paradigm design. And objects cover this nice little corner. It's a big corner, but there are other important approaches to design. And that's the other nice thing about patterns, is they were not a method. So the geometry they had was a very flexible geometry. I mean, you can characterize object orientation as having a geometry. You can view relationships between objects or between classes as symmetry groups with invariants and preconditions and postconditions and all those kind of things. You can with patterns too, but there the geometry is more social and appears more to social norms than say a procedural paradigm or object paradigm or whatever did. So I like its generality, but at the same time, it was rooted in empiricism and did have some formal semantics behind it. And so it was this really, really nice mix that was extremely powerful and able to capture these kinds of things that Ward was looking for, the stuff that no one wants to talk about because they're not novel, but they're so important to the quality of life.
Right. And then we already talked so much different kind of things. I want to maybe go back a little bit, because you started out with saying, okay, what not many people know about the religious part of it, and not to go into indeed to the religious war kind of stuff, but more into the deep, I would say, the thinking part. When I hear this, and then I hear everything you say about more the eastern part of the world, I would say, the thing, where did you make that connection? Is that something that you gradually went into, or is this something, if you care to share, of course?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what aspect you're referring to, but in that area, I can't remember an aha moment. So I think, just somehow I've been fortunate to have the opportunities, the life situations, the experiences that kind of led me down that path. One of the nice things in the early success days of C++, I got invited to a lot of places to speak and teach and so forth. To the Middle East, to Australia, to the Nordics, of course, North America, Asia, everywhere. So I got a really good smorgasbord of broad cultural experience, and so it helped shed light on the narrow-mindedness of a Midwestern North American upbringing. Even before I traveled, I used to listen to international shortwave a lot in my teen years, and that also exposed me to.
So there was already some kind of curiosity for things outside of the small world you grew up in.
Yes.
Right.
So you learn a lot about truth. Truth is not what you read in the newspapers, and many different people will have a different perspective on truth, and it's not that any of them is wrong or right. I learned that at a very young age, and I think this made me more receptive to broad worldview. So not only in the philosophical and religious arena, I have very dear friends and colleagues who are Buddhist, who are Muslim, who are Jewish, who are Christian, who are Baptist, Roman Catholic. I really don't care, right? I'm looking for that deep connection to humanity. And then bringing that to software and asking, where in software is the deep connection to humanity?
Right.
Object orientation was one of the first that started to go in that direction, I think. Alan Kay was all about psychology, right? This is where objects come from. Child psychology. But if you look at the history of software, it kind of parallels the history of the design movement or the history of philosophy, and going through several cycles. somehow in my education, which, ostensibly was an engineering education. But again, in high school, I wanted to learn a language. I lived in a Schweizerdeutsch community, so I signed up to take German. And the German class was full, so they put me in this terrible language called French. And I loved it. I just loved it. But the language was cool. But, just reading the literature, especially the poetry. And so, late 19th century poetry or modern poetry like Prévert. Was he Belgian? Or was he French?
I have
Jacques
no idea.
Prévert.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I have no idea.
I think maybe he was Belgian. But and so that side of me, an interest in the arts or the language arts at least. And then, I have enough university credits in French for a French degree. I didn't fulfill the breadth requirements of biology or things like that for a minor in French. But that part of dipping into philosophy and to the arts and the human side of things has stuck with me as part of my education for years and years. So it's been that. It's been my, travels to the Middle East. I've worked.
What I'm hearing, and actually this is probably a little bit why I asked the question, because I know you as a kind of a sponge, taking on lots of ideas and thinking about these things. So I hear that you had this already probably at a very young age doing this, and then and even some of that happens by accident. I'm now hearing, okay, you wanted to learn German, and okay, it's French, and then you instead of being, I don't know, I could imagine lots of people being and not liking it just because of that event, and you, for whatever reason, jumped completely into it and said okay, and then learned it and loved it, and so yeah, that's. But yeah, I would say I well, of course, I'm Belgian, so yes, my official mother tongue is Dutch, but French is a different or not one of the official languages. German as well, but very little, and I don't dare to say that I speak any little bit of German but I feel French much more. I would say poetic than German. I would say, and probably my German friends might disagree with me, but I think my French friends would agree with me.
Oh my gosh, you're one of Les Flamands? You know Les Flamands by Jacques Brel?
Yes.
Now,
Anyway,
my father-in-law was very much into German poetry. He was a Danish poet, and he actually translated Goethe into Danish.
Wow.
So,
okay.
So he probably would disagree with us about German poetry, but no, I never really got into it.
Wow. So now we already talked. This is why I love so much doing this, but especially with you also. We're talking already about. Well, we moved from religion to different kind of ways of thinking, to poetry, to languages. That's I can think that we talked about some of the things that people didn't know about you. Some people might, or many people might know some parts of it, but I guess not many people might know the full thing. So, let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you? And with the different things that you already talked about, I'm really interested. Was there something that little you was destined to become, where you were dreaming of?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer, because I mean it's easy to get caught in the trap of, what did I want to be? And then this gets one into second guessing and regrets and all that kind of thing. And I think I've always been, happy with what the world serves up to me on a plate in front of me. It's okay, well let's there's something interesting here. I don't know. I come from a small Midwestern town. I don't think I would have become a farmer. I don't think I would have gone in.
Farmers in your family, or with your friends, I guess, when you grew up? Or?
Yeah, I mean, my father was a policeman, but I mean, if we go back to his ancestors, they were all farmers. I come from German,
So he
well,
was the
Pomeranian.
so he was the first to skip the line in that sense, to not
Yeah,
join.
yeah. But his grandfather was the first to move to America from what was then Pullman.
So you have a history of people who are doing the unexpected, I would say, in a way.
No, I think this was pretty common for that generation. For
right.
American immigrants, I mean, they started to break away from farming. There were opportunities in other areas, and so they saw them and went forward with them. But yeah, in terms of what I would have become, yeah, probably not a farmer. I don't know.
Policeman, was that ever an option?
No, I just not really. I don't think it was even an option. I remember in high school when I was talking to my guidance counselor, and I did very well in high school, and very well on the intelligence tests and placement tests. And I was talking to my guidance counselor about where I was going to go to school, and I was going to go to a small local state school because to go into the big urban, intellectually challenging environment of University of Wisconsin, where radicals had blown up the physics research department because of the Vietnam War a few years early. That was just, I didn't see that as being my style. So I told my guidance counselor, I'm going to go to this small state school. And he said, no, you're not. You're going to go to Madison. I mean, he could see my accomplishment and see, okay, I would be intellectually
and you
starved.
Then you did follow that advice or that order?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that easy for you to, because you have one idea and this is kind of a counselor. They don't have I don't know. Do they have any rights of you? No, it's just advice, I would say. Or how was that?
But I had a lot of respect for him and a lot of respect for his insights and his arguments. And I mean, it was culture shock the first month or two. Just, oh my gosh, what have I decided? Where am I? What am I doing? Living in this small room in a dorm that's like a prison cell, right?
Right, especially if you're coming from, okay.
But then after a few months, I got a job at the local computing center in the College of Engineering. And love that too. I mean, and that really was my university education. Yeah, I had a few classes and I learned a few things. I didn't do that well in engineering. I did okay. But basically, taught myself programming operating systems, programming languages, parsers, and things like that by building them at this computing laboratory. And worked there for some 6 or 7 years, maintaining their operating system, serving the College of Engineering, doing some pretty advanced stuff. I mean, that included hardware design, software design. We built whole systems from the ground up. And that really was my computer science education.
Doing it, really, more than being taught about it.
So I think I came close to being an electrical engineer. I spent 5 years in that, but just at the end of 5 years, I thought, what do I know? What can I do? They're gonna send me out there and put me on a line testing circuits, right? And so I was scared to graduate. That's why I went on to my master's. And at the end of a master's program in computer science, I felt like I can conquer the world. But no, I don't know. I don't know what I would have settled into. There was a short time also when I wanted to go into the medical profession. But again, not as a medical doctor or a surgeon, but as a nurse, because I saw there was a death in the family, and I was so moved by the dedication and compassion of these people in the medical profession. I thought, wow, I could see myself doing that.
And that's that's a totally different kind of industry. I don't know if it's the right name, but a work profession. So I can see why you would be moved and be interested in it. What triggered you not to do that, or what was there anything that
I don't really remember. That's a long time ago. It's an interesting question. And I don't think I went through a deep cognitive exercise. It was just kind of like, I mean, I was fairly conservative. And I think, I haven't done this in a while, probably not in 10 years, but looking back on my life, I've just been incredibly lucky. I mean, doors that opened in front of me, I had no right to have them open in front of me. And just, it's been one door after another opening in front of me and leading me down the path I've been going down. And I think I was afraid to jump and make a big decision or change things by force unilaterally, but just
And so
waited for the
going in
doors.
the direction, you would have had to go in a different direction and open doors, while there were basically you needed to open your door on the left while there was already a door on the right open that invited you to get in. Is that how
Yeah,
actually?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well said.
So that it makes sense, especially at that age. Well, I mean, we have little. Most people have literally no. Well, I'm 50 and I still don't know what I want to do with my life. Let alone that at 18 or 20 that I knew what I wanted to do. And of course, if there's then doors that open for you and people invite you in, it's like, hey, let's look around and let's see what's options.
Yeah.
That's which is very nice if that happens to us. It doesn't happen to everyone, but if it happens, indeed, why not look inside and see what are the options?
Exactly.
That's I can imagine that doing that. So, and I like you say, it's not so much about looking back and saying, okay, happy or not. But for me, it was part of having that question is also indeed to make more young people think about, hey, you might go in one direction and you might think you need to have everything figured out, but a lot of people when they're older, they basically say, I stumbled from this into that and to that, and then I had a door open there and I was stuck a little bit there and then I moved there, and yeah, so that's a little bit how a lot of us work, right?
Yeah, but maybe a roundabout way of answering your question. Your question was, if I hadn't been doing what I'm doing now, what would I have been doing? Well, what am I doing now?
Interesting. Yeah. What are you doing now?
I mean, am I doing organizational design? Am I doing technology? Am I doing research? Am I doing method? Am I an author? What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I'm all of these. And I think the advice to a young person is, it's kind of like I told you, I'm into theology. I really love Martin Luther. I tend to latch on to these people who are very, very countercultural. Like here in Denmark, we also have this existentialist tradition, which is, I mean, they almost kicked the guy out of the church because he was so countercultural. And Luther was, well, they did kick him out of the church. But what he said was, sin boldly, but believe more boldly still. So it's, well, what's the worst that can happen? I have this existentialistic attitude. I believe in this. I'm not going to prove it to you. I can't prove it to you. It's just a matter of faith. I have a belief that this is the right direction to go. So, okay, let's try this. Okay, maybe it'll change and I'll do something else. And so I think the advice to young people is, sin boldly, go try stuff. And if it doesn't work, try something else. I mean, you're not going to die. And everyone feels like they're going to die, right?
Well, that's the thing. People are afraid for dying and for, I don't know, having something bad happen to them. And in most cases, nothing's happening. And actually, the things that they typically are not afraid of, that's what they're dying of, and that's the kind of thing. And yeah, that's how it feels, that people are so afraid of doing stuff, and yeah. So I agree with lots of what you say there. Indeed, that's yeah, a nice way of doing it. And indeed, when you ask the question, what am I doing? This is why that question originally, when I had the book version, it was what if you had not been into IT, and I threw that part out because for me it's like if you have not been doing what you're doing now, because for many people it's much broader, and for a lot of people they don't even know. Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, that's the kind of thing. That sometimes my children ask, yeah, when people ask me in school, what's your dad doing or whatever, it's like, yeah, I can't answer. Like, that's a good answer because I can't answer either. I mean, it's basically trying to help people in different kind of roles. And I'm at the level that I don't care about the job title. I've seen so many job titles that mean something else in reality I don't care at that kind of level. But that's why it's interesting to think about what are other options in whatever that we had to. Let's move to that third question. What is at this moment your current biggest challenge? At least the biggest one, of course, that you want to share openly on the internet, and why is that a good thing?
I don't know. I think maybe right now, today, my biggest challenge is choosing a focus. Another one of my favorite books is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, old book. And in that book, Pirsig, the author, talks about this notion of stuckness. And he says, you come to these points in life where you're stuck, right? So you just don't know what direction to go. And he says, these are pivotal points. See, this is when good change happens, and this is change knocking at your door. And maybe right now with the broad disillusionment with agile, with becoming a lot older, with having moved to this new location 5 years ago, there've been a lot of changes that change context, and I'm like, well, okay, what is it that I should be doing right now? Where should I put my energy in the time that remains for me here on this earth? And so it's not a challenge that causes pain. I mean, it's a challenge that's pleasurable to think about. But for the past couple of years, I've been at this point of stuckness. I just kind of trying to figure out, what are the jobs that are undone out there that need to be done where I can contribute.
And is that when you say where I can contribute, could you say some more about, because I have some fantasies when I hear you say that, but I would like to see, what does that mean with you, where I can contribute to?
Well, as a concrete example, one of the things I've been thinking about is, of course, Agile. I mean, this is a who is Agile thing, right? And I've been looking at Agile very carefully for the past 5 years, both as a framework, both formally analyzing it, looking at the literature, looking at results, and Agile basically doesn't work. We can get more into that. The upshot is that Agile leads to local optima, because you're always just taking one step and then inspecting and adapting and taking one step. And there isn't this overarching planning to set context up front to see, okay, what is going to be the broad path of least resistance to climb the mountain? But rather we climb the mountain one step at a time. Well, okay, so we've been fooling ourselves for the past 15 or 20 years. What comes next? And this morning, preparing for this talk, also, I was looking at a model that I use a lot, which is kind of the history of design, or the history of thought, from the L'École des Beaux-Arts into modernism, into Jugendstil, and I mean, you can look at history and see these patterns of evolution. Art Nouveau, the arts and crafts movement in the UK, and then into what dominated a lot of society for you and my lifetimes, which is postmodernism. Software has gone through those same things. I mean, there was modernistic software. Okay, it's all math. It's all technology. We need to prove everything. Then there was more an interest in, okay, how do we serve users? And so, yeah, there were, people got into it, but it was still high tech and very expensive. And then postmodernism came, and that's kind of where agile was, which is, well, okay, the technology should serve the people, and the people should be the driver rather than the other way around. And that's kind of the focus of postmodernism. But now in the past 2 years, I've seen that dissolve. So all the focus, of course, is on AI, which is, and maybe that's just the media. I don't know. I don't think that the Vox Populi is really out there barking about AI, but it's getting all the media attention. But that worries me, because I think most of it is bullshit. But it is getting tremendous mind share. And because if it weren't there, there'd be a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. And as Denis Ritchie said, just because nature abhors a vacuum doesn't mean it doesn't suck. So it got filled with AI. But I'd like to be in a position to help support whatever fills that vacuum. So, what can I do? Well, one of the things I can do is build a small community, bring people together, and say, all right, folks, what do we think? What ideas do we have, or what thoughts do we have? Because, you've probably been thinking the same thing. And bringing together a small group of people and saying, all right, well, let's publish a book. There have been several efforts like this throughout history. Again, I'm very bad remembering the title of this book. There was a similar effort about 30 years ago where they pulled together a whole bunch of people, one of whom was Don Knuth. He was the only software person there. And said, okay, well, what is design about? Where is humanity going? I was also part of a workshop here about 20 years ago. This was actually in France at an old castle, and a place called Villeneuve, and it was called the Villeneuve Group. Mm-hmm. And it was an amazing collection of people. So it was facilitated by an American consultant. But there was a retired German general there. There was William Hoy III, who's probably the most talented English language essayist alive on the face of the earth. There's a leader of a gay dance group in Boston. Just this unbelievably eclectic bunch of people. And the topic was complexity. How do we deal with complexity in society? Of course, a military general knows about that. People who work in the arts know about that. Language people know about that. And a fascinating 2 days. But bringing together people like this, I think, is where these ideas can take root. And maybe it's a Tommy kind of thing. Well, this worked once. We did it with the pattern bunch, right? We got 7 people together, and this grew into an entire movement, which ultimately lost its way. But the roots were honorable. The roots were good. And, there's part of me that'd like to reproduce that. But it is something I don't quite lose sleep over it at night, but I'm wondering, kind of out of desperation for the hope for the future, what is it that I should be doing so that the world doesn't turn into a disaster, at least in the little sector in which I have interactions and maybe have the opportunity to bring together some people to think about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of moved your answer in the direction I was thinking it was going, in a way that, yeah, it's not just where you can spend your time, but also where you it's with quotes, only you can do it in a way that, okay, you have some things there that you can bring that well, I'm not going to say nobody else has, but at least where it's valuable that you bring it, because you have indeed that experience and that historical knowledge and a broad interest in very different kind of things, I would say. Because that's one of the things I sometimes see. Um, I hear some young people also worrying about similar kind of things that you're talking about, but they don't always have that large knowledge and the historical background, which is also might also be important to think about. Yeah, let's not, okay, focus on this little part, but on a larger scale, because like you say, agile has had its merits, but has also its negative parts by uh, having a risk of local optimization, things like that. So that is sometimes people new to agile don't even see think about that. Just like many people 20 years ago didn't think about that, I would say. Um, so that's and so the second part of that question was, why is that a good thing for you? Why is this challenge for you a good part for you?
Makes me feel alive.
Mm.
I mean, we live here with our 3 horses and our cat and our fox, and I guess I could continue on living, leaving food for the fox and feeding the horses twice a day, and it's a nice rural routine. Now, maybe I finally have become a farmer. I guess I'm a gentleman farmer out here with my horses.
Mm.
But it's kind of like if you read Candide by Voltaire. You have the protagonist at the beginning. He's all excited and he's going to go out and change the world. And he gets beat up, terribly. And in the end, he's really, really beat up. And his friend comes all excited. Hey, let's go off on another adventure. And he just says, he's working on his garden. He just says, "Il faut cultiver son jardin." I need to work on my garden. I need to work on my yard. I don't want to find myself in that position. I want to feel alive. I mean, otherwise, what's the point in being alive?
Yeah, I like that as much, because indeed, if people, I was recently talking with some people. It was about people who are afraid of things and who have extreme anxiety, and yeah, one of the things that the person said is like, okay, I wish someone had forced me to go out on that first day that I was feeling that anxiety, because this was a person, yeah, that was talking about being kind of voluntarily locked into his own house for several years, and indeed, because it was hard to get out, and the longer it is, the harder it is, and by feeling alive and feeling, okay, I have to get out and do other stuff, it's actually much easier in the beginning than once you're used to, okay, taking care of your garden or whatever. After a while, that's and yeah, uh, it might be something we see with older people, like, okay, they're locking themselves down, but actually these days I sometimes see it with younger people as well, like yeah.
More and more.
Mm.
Yes. And I mean,
And
I
does that
teach.
frighten you?
Yes, very much. I mean, I teach a lot. And a lot of my students are younger people. I mean, I was teaching in university for a while, and I'm teaching professional courses now. And I see this in the young people. It's really clear is that they're hunkered down. They don't have an outward vision. And just there seems to be an apathy on the part of the current generation that I can't quite figure out. I can't quite figure out what's underneath it. And I wish I had some deeper models for this. I mean, sometimes I wish I'd studied psychology, right? To be able to have some useful models to be able to understand what's going on. But I don't have a model for this. And so I don't quite know how to attack it.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of what you say there. And I don't have an answer or a model for it either. But that's why I was asking if that was something you did recognize. Yeah.
Maybe one of the things that scares me about it unconsciously is it something that that I was going to say our generation, but I think you're probably a generation after me. I think I have at least 20 years on you. But is it something that our generation has done that's programmed the world for this generation to act that way, or has disincentivized them, or so I don't know what it is. My wife is home. She didn't know I was in this interview.
That's fine. Say hello to let's drop this. Let's move to the next part. Because it feels a little bit already tied into what we're talking about, like what drives you. Because anybody that knows you, that you can, you're a very passionate person. Also in this, like we move in other kind of direction, but I feel some kind of passion in many, a lot of drive in that. Do you know where that originally came from, or where that's coming from?
I don't know the source, but I think what drives me is having influence. And I really, really, really feel great if I see someone using an idea from one of my books, or writing to me and saying, wow, what you said in this lecture really, really changed us. So,
and does that, wait, before we jump into that, does this happen very often that people come back to you and pat you on the back and say, hey, you influenced me?
No, well, I don't have metrics, right? But,
that would be really strange if you keep if you would now be able to answer like, yes, this happened 5,703 times.
I mean, of course, I get feedback forms for courses I teach, and at some level, there's a little bit of that. But I mean, these big things. I remember
wait again. Sorry, I'm interrupting, but it's interesting because the feedback forms are typically sent out like immediately after a course. And for me, if I think about that, I have at that moment totally no idea how it has influenced me. I might find it a good course, but I typically only realize like 6 months later, like, oh, really? Yeah, okay. I don't know how it's for you, but for me,
yeah. But maybe once a year or so. I mean, there was this one course I taught, and a couple guys came in late. And they said it's because they forgot to charge up their car, an electric car. They forgot to hook it up and charge it. So they showed up late. They had to stop and charge the car. And I mean, he had big earrings and kind of a Mohawk kind of hairdo and things like this. And I think, okay, these are just some ne'er-do-wells. Well, it turns out he's the CTO of a corporation. This was in Romania, and his colleague was, I think, maybe just an engineer in the corporation. But they liked the course, and they went home and they told their boss, the CEO, and he showed up at the next course I taught in Romania a year or two later. He was impressed. He was CEO of a company. They were a web services company, so they were selling consulting. Come to us and we'll populate your website for you or polish it up. They tore the whole company apart. They turned it from a services company into a product company. Wow. I was emphasizing that Agile is focused on product, right, and on providing value. And the company has doubled or tripled its revenues since then.
Wow!
Because of these guys' experience at the course that I gave, it completely changed their model of the world.
Because with the services part, they felt like, okay, we can make it up into a product, and then.
And so they productized based on, of course, the experience base that they had, but took a product orientation rather than a service orientation, and just it radically changed the way they interacted with their customers. for negotiating results, for assessing value, for all these things. And they're really, really happy campers. So, I mean, something like that maybe happens once a year.
Mm-hmm. That's but I would say that still is rather good, because when I tend to ask this to a lot of people, like, okay, do you get a lot of feedback? And not many people, well, actually a lot of people hardly get any feedback, or it's taking years longer. And yeah, somehow, well, we're rooted into feedback. Gives us, yeah, incentivizes us, but also changes us in for the better, if it's good or bad feedback. So I would say the more feedback we get, the more we are able to adapt ourselves and learn. And also
Maybe.
feel good. Okay, why not?
I mean, I view feedback as kind of the frosting on the cake. So I don't live for the feedback. I mean, it's
True.
really
Yeah,
nice and it's gratifying when I get it. But as I told you, I'm an existentialist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I fucking damn know what I'm talking about. I don't care what you think, right?
But
And
isn't
so
that because you had feedback early on, or is that independent?
maybe,
Or is it because you did research
but
that well, or
I don't think it's as simple as doing research. I think it may be, you're right, the integrative effect of seeing influence over the years. And part of it may be direct, about my direct influence. And part of it may be just because, okay, I'm a part of something bigger, call it object orientation, call it agile, call it, whatever, that is having good impact on society, and feel that I'm part of that.
which is also feedback in a way. It
Yes, which
might
is
not be
also feedback.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I think it's more that's
Mhm.
giving me
Yeah,
the confidence.
that's I didn't articulate it correctly, but that's what I was thinking also. Like, we learn from all kind of feedback, like like driving a car. You move the steering wheel one direction and it goes too much, well, you kind of learn, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't pull the steering wheel that hard.
But
um,
dwelling on it a little bit, you're right. Research does, and that's feed forward rather than feedback. And so if I can stand up and say, damn you, I know what I'm thinking about. A lot of that comes from having researched it. Some of it's from experience. Yes. I've tried this. Okay. We know this doesn't work, but just understanding the deep principles beneath things. Like I said earlier about agile, you look at what agile really is. And it's hard to understand until you've seen alternatives. So an alternative to the inspect and adapt cycle is set-based design, for example. And that was a real eye-opener for me, where you pursue several development paths in parallel and then have a bake-off, rather than a linear progression of having one step in time. By the way, Google does this for new product development.
Could you say some more? I think I've heard about it, how Google did it, but not sure.
Yeah, Toyota does it. I'm guessing other car manufacturers do it, but just you don't hear anyone in software talking about it, and it's so obvious once you see it. But having done the research, and part of that means going outside the discipline. I mean, I learned about this from Toyota, rather than. I mean, I think most of my business is in Japan, and so a lot of my outlook on society and on the future and on how people think is rooted in those mores and those norms. But that really opened my eyes. Seeing the alternatives to X allows one to doubt X more in a more articulated way. And so this is true for object orientation that led to multi-paradigm design. This is true for agile. This is true for design. That's what led to patterns. it's kind of a dubito ergo sum. I doubt, therefore I am. I doubt that this really is the bee's knees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
well,
not that
if you're that focused on so many things around you, like you, then you learn about so many different options, which makes it, I would say, probably easier for you to then say, okay, I choose this direction, and I'm right in a way, because you have seen so many different options. I think that's there I would say there comes some kind of, I don't know, certainness, or that this is where you know it for yourself, huh?
So that's half of it. I think the other half is having a grounding in principles and formalism. So, I wear my academic stripes proudly. I mean, not too visibly. I don't go around asking people to call me doctor or anything like that, to say I don't deliver babies. But there is a part to the rigor and discipline of true experimentation and academic thinking that, first of all, it provides a firm foundation that I can go back to, and becomes a big part of my bullshit meter. So,
but
for a lot of these,
you recognize when people are just inventing stuff,
right,
and are not talking about it from a scientific point of view. That's what
right.
I'm hearing.
And part of it is, like you said, it's seeing this, just looking around me and seeing it. Okay, I'm seeing this for the fifth time every 7 years, and we know what happened last time. So guess what's going to happen again?
Right.
My favorite example of this was microservices. Right, when microservices were all the rage, I thought, oh my gosh, here we go again. Stupid little disembodied objects that you think about independently, which is not how anyone in the know was thinking about objects originally, right? But okay, here we go again, and indeed, they're a waste.
Yeah,
but again,
I've heard that as well. It's like when my father was also one of the people who were into IT and been in the very first computers in Belgium, and so he worked with now I can't come up with what I wanted to say, the mainframe and stuff like that. And I remember at some point we talked about some stuff, and he said, well, like microservices or other things, like a lot of that stuff is similar what we did in mainframe, and I think many things in between. So this is what I meant when I said you come back with that history, and you can point out to people like, hey, okay, this might feel really good in this thing, but we've learned over the years that this and that and that, why that wasn't good in the past. So you need to, if at least you want to make it work, you need to have a solution for these things. If you don't have it, then you have the same problems as we had 7, 14, and 21 years ago.
Actually, I thought of another piece. I think there are three pieces. So one is, here's my experience. Another is my academic background, when I can go into and look at formal foundations. But another one is looking across disciplines. So if you look at some of my recent, I guess I'll call it research. All these phrases are terrible. I mean, the Agile people use the word experiment. They wouldn't know an experiment if it bought them in the bottom. I mean, experiment has a control, an experimental, a hypothesis, and experimental variables. They have no idea what an experiment is. It means we're going to fart around a little bit and see what happens and call it an experiment, right? But one of the last big things, as you know, in Agile, was scaling Agile. And I'll bet you feel very much about scaling Agile the same way I feel about scaling Agile. And I said, this is crap. And what this is the big consultants trying to move into the late adapters who have these big, dumb organizations. They're going to say, we can make you Agile too, so you can join the club.
And pay us lots of money for it.
The big late adapters have a lot of money in the bank. And so I thought, well, okay, let's say you did want to make one of these organizations work. What would it look like? And so I looked into some systems theory. And actually, this came out of a discussion with Jeff Sutherland. I went to Jeff, and Jeff is selling this scaled, agile, whatever. Mm-hmm. I said, well, why does it work? And he says, because Scrum is scale free. Okay, that's interesting. So I asked him, what do you mean by scale free? And he says, well, scale free means that I can add a team without affecting the productivity of any other team. Well, that's easy. You just add the team and not have them talk to anyone else, right? It doesn't affect the productivity of any other. Okay, so that can't be it. So yeah, scale free means something in mathematics. So there's something called a scale-free network. It's a formal mathematical object, and it has some really, really interesting properties in that you get a very robust spanning tree with almost minimal connectivity. And the key is you have these hubs. So this is how airlines work. So airlines will have airline hubs, and instead of going, directly from Paris to Lahore, you go from Paris to Lufthansa to Lahore, and the middle one becomes a hub. And so you can decrease the overall number of legs in the network. You can decrease the overall number of flights at the expense of a slight amount of latency. And this is how complex systems organize themselves, like the World Wide Web, like airline paths. Whoa, what do those have to do with each other? It's the same pattern. Mm-hmm. And okay, well, let's apply that to a development organization. What does that look like? And now you go looking into successful large organizations. I mean, there are some. I mean, you have a defense contractor there in Belgium that makes these huge systems that have command and control centers, radar, missile guidance. It's one company, right? One big company is selling this. It's pretty big. And they're organized around these same principles. So in Scrum, we have things called Scrum of Scrums. We have the Meta Scrum. These are hubs for people who understand them. And now things really get interesting, because if you look at where you know what a Scrum of Scrums is? Most people don't. If you look at where the idea came from, what a Scrum of Scrums is, it's a temporary Scrum team that comprises members of other Scrum teams to coordinate issues between them and solve problems of coordination. And you bring it into existence to solve a problem and it goes away. So what Jeff did is he institutionalized it. It's on the org chart. It has membership. It's a Scrum team. It corresponds to a product owner. And so he's feeding the cultural expectations of large corporate America with a traditional hierarchy. And hierarchy is antithetical to dialogue. It goes against everything that Agile stands for. Mm-hmm. But if you look at how the big companies really do it, they have these hubs. And so I invented something which has been around for 30 or 40 years. Well, I gave it a name, gave it a model. So I think that's a big part of recognizing what's going to work. And again, gives me the confidence, together with the formal grounding and my experience, to go out and give talks on it or write about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and indeed that part of the, I'm really glad you brought back the experience, broad industries and from different parts, because that's how nature works as well, in many different ways, and that's what I would say, in a way, what Agile, if you look at the originally parts of Agile, was doing the same thing. It was bringing, well, first of all, the manifesto was bringing people from different IDs, different kind of Agile, whatever that was meant before, together. But also, if you look at, I would say, extreme programming, they had a lot of good ideas that were existing before and attaching them and saying, well, combined, they work even better in a way. That's in many ways rather important. Let's move to that next question, because with all of that, do you have anything what you would consider your biggest achievement? What is that for you?
Raising 3 kids.
And what's for you, because like you said, you're a little bit older than me, what is the hardest part about that, and where's the achievement maybe in that?
I think the hard part is balancing control and liberty, because you want to shape them. And yeah, you need to shape them by example. And I probably can reflect on this a lot better now that the job is done than I could in the middle of the job.
Well, that's interesting. Is the job ever done as a parent?
At some point you let go and the role changes. So yeah, I mean, I'm still there as a supporter and a nurturer. And I mean, I do support my kids. Chris, who's in Florida, Lorelai, who's in Chicago, and Andrew, who's based near Chicago. But in terms of being the guiding light, I think I'm less that. I mean, it's very important at this point that they feel the freedom to take responsibility for their decisions and actions. I mean, I'm here to help, and of course to relate my experience and give an opinion. But yeah, I think that the role changes. Yeah, but yeah, in the middle of it,
you don't want them to basically call you for every decision. At some point, it's like, this is your life. You have to make your own decisions. I will, like you say, they might call you or ask you for some advice, but it's only that. It's only advice at that point, I would say.
So I think, balancing the control with the freedom, and being the wise man I am now, I'd say that, it'd be even probably less on control. My parents were extremely controlling when I was growing up, very conservative Midwestern American upbringing. And I resent that.
And did that then give you enough of the tools, or I don't know, the desire to do the exact opposite, or how did that work for you as a starting parent, for example?
I don't think I went overboard, but yeah, I was aware of the spectrum, and but maybe I could have done it more effectively with just everyday little things. So I mean, it's obvious how you apply that to big things, like if they want to marry someone from a different religion or of a different race, that's perfectly fine. Okay, well, great. I'm not going to be controlling there. And I can, put a feather in my hat and say, wow, look at the points for me for having contributed to that decision. But in terms of, I'm going to finish my homework later. Well, no, you need to finish it now. Well, okay. Do I get to say that or not? And so it's in these small little things that I think that are very powerful and very memorable in the psychology of a young child. And I don't think you can plan this. I think you have
the kids, they come up with all these things that I recognize that.
Yeah. So you just have to be yourself, and you have to do your best. And I mean, I can sleep at night saying, well, at the time I did my best. I can think of things I could have done better. I could have been just a better person. And I think that would have made a big difference. But yeah, I can sleep at night. I did my best. And I'm very, very proud of my kids. So that's,
I recognize so much the part that when you said you can't plan for that. I mean, you can discuss something with your partner and say like, okay, let's do this, and then the next morning the kids will do whatever, or in the night somebody pooks up and then your whole schedule is turned over,
right,
or falls ill or whatever, and then you have to. Yeah, I recognize that so much. And I love how you bring up this is really, and it's the same as for children as for teams. Like, okay, you need to guide them at some point, but controlling doesn't help. But sometimes it helps to get some. Well, control also gives some kind of safety if there is a boundary that gives a lot of safety on where they can experiment with. So we need something that they can feel safe in doing that. But it's
This is maybe going to sound trite or superficial, but I mean, one of the more powerful books I've read is it's a theological book by a guy named Carson. It's called Finite and Infinite Games. And he says most things in life can be modeled as games, and there are two kinds. There are finite games and infinite games. So in finite game, you have rules. You sign up voluntarily to play the game by the rules, and the goal of the rules is to produce a winner and a loser.
mm-hmm.
And if you're the winner, there's an audience, and the audience will give you accolades. Will give you applause or an award or something like this. So finite games include basketball, chess, getting a promotion at work, getting an academic degree, getting an A in a course. In infinite games, the goal is to keep playing the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so if there are rules, yeah, there are rules, but if you follow the rules, it's just a finite state machine, and you'll just come back to the same place you started at, and that's kind of boring. So there are rules for changing the rules. So I don't know. Do you have Calvin and Hobbes in Belgium?
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Do you know Calvin ball? Every time you touch the ball, you get to change one rule.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So life is kind of like Calvin ball. And so infinite games include life.
This is the book you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Excellent.
I love it as well. So I think I learned about that book from Alistair Cockburn.
And he learned about it from me.
Here you go.
Because he was into this concept of agile is a game, right? And I introduced him to that book, A Finite and Infinite Games, and yeah, he loved it. But yeah, infinite games include life, love, relationship. Evil is playing an infinite game as though it were a finite game. That is playing an infinite game to win. And there is only one infinite game. So I view my job and our profession as an infinite game. And I bring over that perspective to what I do to answer the question, or to analyze the question, is this about winning? It's not about winning. Okay, it's about continuing to play the game. So there's another one of those crossovers.
Yeah, I really like that, because if I look back at many different decisions I've taken in my professional and probably also my personal life, it's really a lot about, okay, how can I keep playing in a way. And sometimes you say I want to keep playing, but maybe I change the game, and that's indeed it. And it's fun because when I was, how old was I? Probably 13, 14. I had a summer that there was my parents at some point they did some kind of foster child. I don't know. They brought in a child that was in I don't know in how would I call it, somewhere not with his parents, and he was with us the full holiday, and we basically played Monopoly for the full summer. So we just kept playing, and it's like and we found all kind of rules. Now you could borrow money and whatever, basically with the idea to keep playing that same game. It was not just multiple times game. No, it was the same game we played the full summer.
Okay.
So we didn't just start all over. No, we had one game, and one day I would be filthy rich, and the next day I would be completely broke because of whatever. And we kept just playing, and I never thought about it, but somehow it was about what can we do to keep playing that same game, because it wasn't. We played it not to win. We just played it to keep playing, and it was only it's only now that I'm realizing, like, somehow that was already in me. Like, I don't care about the winning part. I care about keep playing. It's much more fun.
But
Yeah.
an example there is if someone became bankrupt and you kick them out of the game, that's evil.
Yeah, well, we were only two, so that would not have been possible because then the game would be over.
Right.
So we had to find ways to, and that's why at some point we invented like you could borrow money indefinitely and all kind of things. So yeah, which actually sometimes is also what banks do. They don't want you to go bankrupt. Because bankrupt means they lose all their money. They want you
Right.
to stay in debt and keep paying. But okay, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, it's life is a yeah. Well, it's not infinite in a way that for a person it's not infinite, but the life itself hopefully is infinite and everything keeps going. But some players might go.
Well, there's an infinite aspect to it once. I don't know if you know who Larry Constantine is. You're kind of again, just, okay, so he's a good friend of mine. And by the way, he's also a science fiction author, which I don't think is broadly known, but he doesn't write under his name. He writes under the name Leor Sampson. But if you look up,
at some point I heard about that.
but he once posed a question to me: if you had a choice and you could control destiny, and you could have an idea and be very famous during your lifetime, but not be remembered for any of it 10 years from now or any time after, or if you struggle to be accepted during your lifetime, but 100 years from now, you're revered as someone who had fundamentally earth-shaking ideas and are embraced, and your ideas are embraced, which do you choose?
Wow, that's a hard choice.
Not for me.
Okay, why not? Why is it not hard for you?
It's indeed. I'm in this for the influence, for the long-term influence. I'm not in this for the quick pop. And again, it's about sticking to my principles.
But it's the influence, but even if it's influence that you don't know that you will have.
That's right. And a part of it is standing up for what is right. And maybe that doesn't even have to do with consequences. And I think this is part of my kind of my existentialist mindset. I mean, when test-driven development first came out, I said, this is bullshit. And I was at a conference where, who was there? This was in Finland, and Pekka Abrahamsson was there, and this agile consultant from IBM was there. And I was going around saying, this is bottom-up unit testing. This is you're recreating the way we do bottom-up procedural design. And I mean, you're not going to get a good architecture with bottom-up procedural design. And it's important to understand that at that time, TDD very clearly was not a testing technique. It was a design technique. And you were designing your individual unit tested pieces. And so this can't work. I said, your coupling and cohesion is going to go to hell in a handbasket. Well, Pekka, he heard me saying these things. And so he took his PhD student, and they went off and they did 3 years of research on this. I mean, real empirical research with real teams. Some of them are student teams and some of them professional teams. And I was exactly right. And so I kind of stuck with that, saying, well, okay, I have the theoretical underpinnings. We have empirical data. And this was very unpopular. I mean, I was viewed as, he's not agile. He doesn't believe in TDD or blah, blah, blah for years and years and years. And there's the famous non-fight with Uncle Bob on the web. I don't know if you've seen that. That was a lot of fun.
I don't remember, at least.
But now, finally, on LinkedIn, you're starting to see people making excuses for TDD and saying, well, we really don't use it as a design technique. And working with clients, I'm finding that TDD is really only thriving in its original sense of being a design technique in 2 places in the world. One is Australia and the other is Japan. Everywhere else, people are hedging it. It's either a testing technique or people are saying, yeah, it does not work as a design technique. You still need some other kind of design, whether it's domain-driven design or whatever. But it was a matter of standing for my principles. Now, that was only about, a paradigm shift period of time, about 13 to 17 years, which is how long it takes for a new paradigm to sink in. That's interesting. It wasn't the 7-year standard thing. It took longer than 7 years for people to see the light about TDD. But it was more this paradigm shift thing. What I'm looking for is things of that ilk that are on the period of decades, because that's where the leverage is. And some part of my memory will still be around. The cells of my brain and my superstructure for perceiving and receiving the effects of that and processing that in something we term consciousness may not be around. But my influence will be there.
Okay, that's, yeah. I definitely, I love also the way you said, like, okay, you want there for the principles, and you say, okay, standing up for what's right. But I noticed with many people that for them it's like, it's somehow sometimes hard to see, but you don't know. A little bit like, I don't know, some famous painters that are now famous, that they were broke when they died and they had no ID, and now everybody's like, oh, it's like, it's also feels a little bit sad that nobody saw their greatness at that time for them. But it's clear for you, like, I know that I'm right, I have my principles and I stand with it, and I just kind of assume that later more people will see it, in decades people will see it. Is that the way to
or not or not?
And then you're not around, so you don't care either.
But I have lived a meaningful life.
Right.
I can look back on my life.
What's right.
I can say I have no regrets.
Yeah.
There are some things I could have done better. That's certainly true. But
on the principle part, no, that's what I'm hearing. And that's also a little bit what I heard about with your children growing up, and it's like, okay, I done my part. I don't know who, but someone here on the podcast said, the damaging part is done, and I can't damage them anymore. Like
that's a good way of putting it. Yes,
it's like that part is done, and yes, like, well, I think it's no, I don't think it's from a podcast, but from a personal friend of mine who said, like, okay, all our children will all need therapy at some point. You can't avoid it, but we can just minimize the kind of therapy that they need.
What percentage of your interviewees, when you ask them what's your greatest accomplishment, say my children? I'm curious.
I think by definition, almost everybody wants to say it, or at least wants to bring that in. At the level that at some point I thought, should I just say, or right up front, like, you're not allowed to say that, because it's always interesting. There is more, but I've also learned to not go too much into that discussion, because I've noticed that once we talk about, okay, what part about the children, when we dive deeper, it always brings a lot more to that part. It's and the part about the children is never just, okay, I'm proud of it and blah blah, but there is always a deeper level. That's what I feel. Something that my children don't understand yet, I would say, because they're like, yeah, you're just proud because you're a parent. Yes, but there is more, typically more, that I think for many people of us, like, okay, we've done a part, like you said, okay, we try to do based on principles and do something. And a quote that I didn't bring up when you were talking earlier is like, with teams, for example, we always want and with our children, we don't want them to to give in to peer pressure, except in the morning when we need to go to school and we're under time pressure. Then like, and yeah, at some point you need to find some balance. Like, okay, if it's always hard in the morning to get them to time to school, maybe I should change myself and let's get up half an hour earlier so that we have more time and I don't feel pressured anymore. It's not so much about and find ways to deal with them.
Yeah.
And show the principle, because I want them. I don't want to stress them, because that doesn't help in the rest of the day. Neither does it help to me. And maybe, okay, getting up a little bit earlier or doing whatever trick that helps them to show them, like, okay, there is a part of that. And then they can make the decision. I remember my son last year in the middle of the exams, he was invited to go to a food festival. So basically,
Yeah.
a lot of good cooks were doing. So it was a Saturday and a Sunday, 2 days
In Belgium?
In Belgium, where they really had a food. So basically,
That-
a lot of chefs making one dish, and so the whole afternoon you could eat, I don't know, 5 to 7 dishes and have a lot of different things.
Some of the best food in Europe.
Yes, and
Really?
he worked with some of these, so he knew at that level, and he just said, "Okay, I want to go." And for me, it was like, "Okay, you're in the middle of your exams, but why do you think you can go?" And he was like, "Yeah, but I know that my next exam is not on Monday; it's on I think it was on Wednesday. I know I'm prepared at that kind of level, so I think I can do it." And so as a parent, I said, "It's your choice," and yeah, everything worked out fine. He did have at some point a problem with an exam, but that was actually the week before. So basically, all the exams afterwards, he nailed them perfectly, and so he took the right decision. And for me, it was really that kind of moment that you feel like you're old enough to make that decision, and that's fine. And you it's this is the kind of level that you need to do this kind of things.
That's interesting. I told you that one of the things that gives me satisfaction is having influence.
Mhm.
There's this very Zen concept called the way of non-action. So you should have the same kind of pride in what you did in not having influence.
Well, it's an influence and another influence. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like I'm and the reasoning and the discussions. I don't remember the full conversation anymore, but I do remember that being really proud after that discussion. Like, okay, he thought it through. It was not just like, okay, I don't care about my exams. Like, no. He considered it in a way, and I feel that I had the influence, but not at that moment. But
Not
like,
the control.
yeah, not the control, and definitely I had the influence, like, I don't know, a couple of years before, making him think about some of that stuff. But at that very particular moment, I think he was 19 at the time. It's like, okay, that's the moment you can take these decisions perfectly on your own, and then I can. Of course, that doesn't mean that with me there was not some kind of anxiety on the next days, like, will it work out? Did he make the right whatever? But letting go and say, this is part of your life. That's it, and making the taking the consequences. If it would not have worked, that's also his
Right.
part. Let's move to that next question, because it feels like we're already taking a long time. Do you have a personal agility tip to share? And you already talked a lot about agile in a way. So is there anything you want to share with people?
I mean, agile is so simple. And I think a lot of the consultants like to say, I have this secret sauce that, if you use it. If you had phrased the question like, if there's only one agile tip that I could get you to buy into, what would it be? I think it would be pair programming. Now, is that an agile tip? I mean, what in the hell does agile mean?
Well, that's the typical kind of question I get when they ask me about this question, and I on purposely don't want to
Right.
define it. Like it is what people want it to be, and so when you say pair programming, is it just about the programming? Is it about pair working in general? How do you?
I think it depends on the context. It's really, really difficult to paint with a broad brush. And again, if I go down to the level of principles, the principles are many hands make light work. 4 eyes are better than 2. So, I mean, at a Toyota work cell, they staff the work cells depending on what the takt rate is, the load rate is for the day, but never below 1 person, because it's important that no one ever work alone. So even though from an operations research point of view, an efficiency
you said never below 1 person, you mean never below
no,
2
never
persons?
below 2, sorry, right, never below 2. From an operations research point of view, it is not cost effective to have 2 people there. We do not need that much productivity. But from a human point of view, it's important that no one ever work alone. So there's always at least 2 people there.
Well, I remember starting this discussion also when I do with some clients. I ask the CEOs when they talk about the cost and whatever. I ask them, would you ever go on a plane when there's only one pilot? Is that because it's much cheaper, and that's for me the question when a lot of people start to understand the value of 2 people when their lives and a lot of lives might be at stake. And
yeah, if you look at all of and sometimes what people mean by agile is XP practices. And so if you look at some of the research, and this is out of University of Wellington at New Zealand, a lot of the XP, especially the old XP ideas, like on-site customer and architecture as metaphor, and what else? A lot of other things. I mean, they've done research on them and shown, yeah, these really don't work. The one that works is pair programming. And there's been extensive research on that. There was, what's the title of this book? Pair Programming Explained?
Yeah, by
Laura,
I forget her name, but she was on the podcast here as well already.
Okay, I mean, I was at Bell Laboratories working in research, and I got an email from her one day saying, hi, I'm out here in the middle of, some, I don't know,
it's
small Western
illuminated, not
illuminated. Okay, of some small Western state, and I'm looking for a topic for a PhD thesis. What should I study? And I was mildly skeptical about pair programming because so much of the other XP stuff had really fallen on its face. And I said, well, why don't you look at this thing called pair programming? Do some real research on it. So that's why she went into this.
I think she even explained it on the podcast, that your influence on that. I think.
But it's, I think that book maybe gave pair programming a little shot in the arm. So we really have her to thank. I mean, it's really, really good research. Now another, but again, is that an agile thing? I mean, there was a guy, he's a consultant, and he asked me on LinkedIn, he says, by the way, where did this pair programming thing start from? I heard that it started with Kent Beck and XP, and said, no, it's long before that. And I said, let me talk to Lori. And actually, Lori was involved in this conversation too. So Lori, I think, was the one who told him it was maybe Kent. I said, okay, let me go look. So I sent mail to 5 of my friends, okay, who were Brian Kernahan, Larry Constantine, Jerry Weinberg, and 2 others. I don't remember who the 2 others were. Do you know where pair programming came from, right? The answers were fascinating. So I think it was Larry who said, well, okay, I talk about it a lot and people think it was me, but it wasn't me. He says, I think it was P.J. Plauger. Now, P.J. Plauger was one of the founders of, I don't remember the name of the company, but they wrote the first C compiler outside of Bell Laboratories.
Oh, okay.
And, Ed Yourdon. That was another one who I wrote to.
Mm.
And Ed said, yeah, it was definitely P.J. Plauger. And the reason is they had the startup to do C compilers, and they were using ASR 33 teletypes. So the old teletype terminals, right? And they were very expensive. So Plauger loaned them the money, interest-free, to use these things, but he insisted that two people had to use it at a time. and that's where pair programming came from. So I don't know if that's true or not.
But that's, yeah.
And
that's
then
really
I heard from Jerry Weinberg, and he says, well, Lisa Skoll and I did Trygve Renskog was another one. And he said, Lisa Skoll and I did pair programming, and this is back in the 1960s in Smalltalk. No, 70s. Must have been 70s if it was in Smalltalk, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't Smalltalk. And then I heard from Jerry, and Jerry said, well, we were doing it at White Sands Missile Base in Los Alamos, New Mexico in the 1950s. And he said, I learned it from Bernie Sands, and Bernie learned it from John von Neumann.
Okay. And we have the whole history of informatics, of IT in a way. Literally, my father talked to me about this as well, that when he was in the army, and now we're talking probably the 70s, the 80s, that he did, well, it's not pair programming, but it was related. He would, it was probably more set-based design, but he talked about it with me as pair programming in the sense that when he had a problem with his buddy, they would solve the same problem at the same time, take an hour, then come back for a coffee, discuss their code, then go back again. So they were not at the same time at the same keyboard, but they were doing the same kind of things that we do in pair programming, like discussing it and influencing, and then starting over. From how my father explained it to me, he said, like, then we would just take the idea of one and continue working on that one. Again, the two of them. So it was a link of set-based design and pair programming.
Brilliant.
Already in the 70s.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, that's yeah.
So this is what I mean about we keep discovering the same ideas every 7 years. This is what I mean about the need to understand history.
Exactly. And actually, a lot of ideas, when they're good, many people will come up with the same solution. Yep. In many industries, like, well, today, I don't know how it is in Denmark, but in Belgium today, radios, the important shows, the morning shows and the show in the evening, it's always with two presenters, because it's somehow it became, and this is, I would say, rather new the last 20 years. Before, it was typically one presenter with maybe some people in the studio helping out, but now it's two people doing the whole show, doing presenting and everything. It's like, that it feels so natural for so many people. Like, I don't know, policemen are with two, pilots are with two. I think we can all come up with parents. I'm not going to say it's impossible to raise a child alone, but I have a couple of friends who are doing it alone and who say that's a damn much harder job than when they were still together with their original partner.
Well, therefore, Smalltalk sucks because it doesn't have multiple inheritance, because you should be able to have. No, but you hear this from people, right? I mean, in nature, we have two parents every child, so you should have the same thing in object orientation. So it takes a little intelligence to apply these principles and not say stupid things like this, right?
Right. But yeah, thank you. It's when you say, is it an agile tip or not? I think the whole discussion around it, and indeed having people like, this is something that has been researched. And for me, it's interesting that it is one of the things that we have a lot of research on, showing it's working, and still so many companies are fighting against it. That it's very strange that it's one of the practices that probably has most research on it.
Now, the other thing that should be part of Agile, would be my answer to this, but it's not part of Agile, is end user collaboration between the developers and the team. You see, the Agile Manifesto says customer collaboration. In English, customer has nothing to do with using the product. The customer is the purchaser. And so, yeah, you're going to interact with the people in the suits and ties, and that's what a customer is. But this whole issue of end user interaction, and this is one thing where the Agile Manifesto is extremely weak. There's nothing in there about usability, about the human side. It's the green bar comes up, working software. And everyone thinks, okay, that means the green bar comes up, right? And so this whole notion of the human side of things is missing, and the interaction with the end user. So again, this is a very, very strong component of Japanese industry, and they call it being down on the gemba. There's another wonderful book. One of the major suppliers to Toyota is called Denso. And one of the principals there, I thought he was CEO, but someone corrected me in the last term there. His name is Kobata-san. And he would be down on the factory floor every day. And what he would do is stand and observe someone at their station. And just stand and watch for 15 minutes, and then go up and ask them questions and maybe give them a little advice. Now, and he's the one who popularized this concept, or that book popularized the concept of Genshi, Genba, Genbutsu, and you hear about Gemba walks and all of this. So you have these Gemba walks when the CEO goes through and says, good morning to everyone and hi, and knows everyone's name. It's not a Gemba walk. It's a go down to the Gemba and observe. And so it's this whole Deming PDCA cycle.
It's one of the things. I don't know if I got it from the Toyota Way or from one of the other books around Toyota that where they explain that new people, when they I don't know if it's new manager or whatever, they basically are assigned a circle in the factory where they have to stand for a while to just observe and really understand what's going on. That okay, once there is a problem, well, when you're every day there watching, when there is a problem, you will just feel it. Like if I go into a team that I know really well, they don't have to tell me something is wrong. I walk into the team and I just know it. I mean, that's
you're a consultant.
Concept. Well, yeah,
You're a good consultant. You know these things. Yes.
I know how to read the signs of a team, but I only know it because I've worked in teams before and I've done the job. So yeah, and yeah, I think we all recognize some of the phrases when you ask a person, "Is it done?" and they say, "Yeah, I only have to." Then like, okay, then it's not done.
Oops.
But there's phrases, but there's also body language that you can see in teams and things like that. So
absolutely.
Well, and that brings me kind of in a way to that next question about remote work. When we talk about body language, it's different in a way on remote work. What have you learned about remote work? Because when you move, what you said you moved to where you are, and you also said you work a lot with Asian countries. Do you always go there? Do you work remotely? How does that work for you?
So, to a first approximation, remote work doesn't work. I hate it. And this includes remote teaching, remote programming and all these things. There are a very few exceptions. There are some organizations that have been able to pull this off. And I've not been able to study them in a lot of detail. I suspect there's something unseemly going on there, like they're using Kanban to hell and splitting the work up into independent parts, and the people are working independently. It's not really a team, and there's really not interaction. What precipitated an increase in my remote work was COVID. And that just it was
people, that's yeah. So wait, because you say what precipitated, but does that mean that you didn't do any, or you did already before, but it felt wrong, or how was it?
So I did it once. This was in a university setting where I did a talk. Was it from a university or to a university? I don't remember. I just said, I'm never going to do that again. But I think once, in 20 or 30 years, I'd done remote work. I just avoided it. So I didn't do any until COVID came around, and it became a business imperative. The customers wanted to have some service, and I wanted to offer them something.
And you wanted to have some income, I guess, and you were not allowed
Yep.
to go anywhere. So
Yep.
it's kind of like everybody else was like, okay, let's give it a try, or something like that.
So I tried to learn how to make that effective, but I mean, it's just not the same. I just did a remote course here and again, it was for 6 people. I mean, that's the other nice thing is I can do this for 6 people. I'm probably just going to break even because I need to hire an interpreter. And I split the money with the person who organizes and facilitates, put the whole thing together. And with the current prices on the agile market, I mean, probably will just break even. Certainly, if I'd traveled there, I would have taken a big loss. But 6 people got at least the basic knowledge that they would not have gotten otherwise. And again, this is one of the places where I got some feedback from the students. They said, wow, you really opened my eyes. So I thought, okay, well, it was worth it. Gee, I wonder what it would have been like if I'd actually been there, and gone over the top. So I really, really hate remote work. And discourage my clients from doing it again and again and again. And it's such a broad spectrum. I see things that are just silly, from companies in Europe outsourcing to Southeast Asia or to India. I mean, just incredibly silly. My wife has amazing stories. She used to work for a company here in Denmark called Navision, and they kind of make low-end SAP kind of systems. And she's a use case person. And so she was told she needed to write use cases. And she's like, you don't write use cases. I mean, she has kind of the same view of use cases as we probably do of user stories. You tell them. It's a conversation. The writing is optional, right? But she was told, okay, you need to write use cases that we're going to send to our outsourced programmers in India. And she was working on them and working with
the intention to send it, and that she would never be able to talk to them, right?
Right. And she talked to one of the people at her company, and the woman said, hey, come here. And she opened up the code and she says, what this means is changing these 7 lines of code to these 7 lines of code. And now you're going to write 4 use cases on this. They're going to be sent to India, and, we're not allowed to send them the code, right? Because that's not proprietary. Okay.
Yeah.
And then she got told in the middle of this, okay, you need to rewrite all the use cases because we're no longer working with a subcontractor in India. We're going to be working with Maersk here in Denmark. So you need to start over. And she's like, what?
But wait, because we have different people writing the code that shouldn't change the. Okay.
I don't know, but I mean that's the kind of silliness you see in this remote work arena. It's just it's incredibly unincited.
Yeah, I've seen similar kind of things as well. Okay, let's move to that next question about a book. What's a book that you want to talk about? And of course, we already talked about different kind of books. What's a book that you want to bring up here?
Yeah, and I kind of just picked one at random because I thought, okay, let's do something that probably no one else has picked. And so I picked it's not as old a book as I thought. It was published in 1988. It's a collection by a guy named John Thakera. Now, John Thakera is a British author. I think he's an academic, very well known in the field of design. And a lot of it is in kind of the IT area, or let me say industrial design, but really more broadly than that, into the whole social movement of design. And this is a collected work. And you're sitting in 1988, and it's called Design After Modernism. So
I think
he
that's
says,
the book, right?
yes. So he says, coming up to this point, we've had this modernistic school, and modernism was based in technology. Okay, that was too inhuman. So that was followed on in the late 19th century by Art Nouveau. And Art Nouveau, tried to add flowers from nature and more asymmetric concepts and muted colors, but it still depended on technology. It was still very, very expensive. And then you have the arts and crafts movement particularly in the UK and to some degree in the US, that said, well, we can use mass manufacturing with a little bit of care to do the design that makes these things still beautiful. I mean, I used to collect plates, ceramic plates, and they were hand painted with flowers or something like this around the edge, and then they're actually each one was individually signed on the back. And this is what people use as their dinner plates in the 1950s, or you could get them for free for offers at grocery stores and things like this.
Right, remember that.
And then came postmodernism, and postmodernism is a little less well defined, and it's much broader because it's not just in the arts, but is a broad social movement. Now, I started looking at this when I was looking at patterns, because in working with Christopher Alexander, I mean, he told me he hates postmodernism, and he says the postmodernists have all these crazy ideas. And then I was talking to some of his students, and they said, well, he's the most postmodern person you're going to find on the face of the earth. So here you have this human-centered.
And when you say he, then you mean
Chris Alexander.
Right? The one who wrote this book, right? Pattern language.
Yep. So in fact, I mean, I think he was just kind of blind to the fact that he was fairly broadly characterized as a postmodernist.
Right.
And what I like about this book, I mean, what it did for me is it opened my mind to the fact that software is just one small part of social endeavor that's part of a larger industrial complex that's part of society. And this is following these economic and industrial norms that have flowed through history. And software is always a little bit behind the rest. But in fact, these same phases and the same implications on method and group work and market and relationship to market, you can see in the software world. So kind of the waterfall world that we like to, talk about with waterfall as a bad world is very much in the field of modernism, about control. If you go before modernism, back into the 1950s, which is the period that Richard Gabriel likes to talk about a lot. He'd be an interesting person for you to interview, by the way. And he'd say, well, yeah, I mean, we worked directly with customers. We didn't follow any method. We did what made sense. We were rooted in the technology. But what we did was very intensely focused on making the end user happy. And we were doing this in Lisp back in the 1950s because, okay, we had the ability to iterate it. And he calls that agile. And so when all this agile bullshit came out, he said, what's this all about? Been there, done that. And besides, you can't do it in C++ because the language doesn't support it. You need Lisp. And, I don't know what all these stupid patterns are for in the Gang of Four book, because you don't need them in Lisp. They're all part of the language. I don't understand any of this stuff that's going on. So he was a real curmudgeon about all of these new concepts like agile and patterns and so forth. But now you move into postmodernism, and I think this is maybe kind of what Agile wanted to be, is to remove the shackles of the technology and to move beyond technology, that is, beyond the tools, into people, individuals, and interactions, and customer collaboration. But it was tempered by industrial practicality. And so you see that in the arts and crafts movement, and even to some degree in the Art Nouveau movement, which was, at the turn of the century, between the last 10 years of the 19th century and the first 10 years of the 20th century. Jugendstil was kind of the same thing in German. So this is why I really liked patterns, because they are really squarely in this. And this book has a lot of essays saying, all right, well, what are the social implications of moving from this to this? What are the implications on the economy? What are the implications for how providers work with markets, and so on and so forth? And I mean, this is 1988. I mean, this is a book way, way, way ahead of its time. And all of these talking heads, these experts in design, there's actually one chapter in there by Christopher Alexander, and it's called "A City Is Not a Tree." So he says, when modern city designers do urban planning, they divide up the city with boundaries between it. There's an industrial quarter, there's a shopping quarter, there's a residential quarter. And he says, no, it's not like that. These are not quarters with boundaries in between them. They bleed into each other. And you have parks that kind of knit them together. And a park really isn't a place. He says one of his patterns is something called city country fingers. So here you have the urban areas, and then there are green areas that kind of fit between them like this. And you have alternating urban and green, with the backbones of them connected in a forest on one hand and in the city center on another hand. And so it was a whole different way of looking at urban planning. And so he was very critical, of course, about how urban planning was done then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that The City Is Not a Tree was also at some point published as a book, or I don't know, the idea at least.
Yeah, I think you can buy it as a self-contained book. I think Oxford University Press probably wrapped it up as a book, but it's not that long. It's only 40 or 50 pages. It's pretty small.
But I remember, seeing it and reading it, but I don't know, was it digital or I don't remember anymore. Anyway, let's move to that next question. What's a question do you think I should also ask you? Because we already talked about so many different kind of concepts, so many different things. Is there something that you think I should also ask you, or that we haven't talked yet about that you still want to talk about?
Oh, maybe I thought I was going to think about this before you asked this to me in the interview, because
you're not saying that, but I, at the same time, you're a fast thinker. So what comes to your mind at this point?
I mean, when I do these interviews or something like this, or just even I did this the other day with someone who I just met over dinner. Mm-hmm. And after getting to know them a little bit and breaking the ice, I asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, we talked indeed a little bit earlier about that. I said I have no idea what I want to be when I want to grow up. So what is it for you? Because you said you're older than me. Is there still something you said you didn't want to think too much back to the past? Is there still something in your future that you want to be?
Yeah, I think I'd like to dive deeper into understanding people. I mean, getting some formal modeling tools. So either in anthropology or in psychology.
So you said earlier on, I haven't studied psychology. Are you then talking about going back to university or doing it on your own? How do you see this?
No. Going back to university, probably remotely. I've studied it.
But you don't believe in remote. How does? Now my mind.
Oh, but I mean, you can learn a lot by reading books. And I mean, I've done some of that already. And I've studied psychology a lot under Jerry Weinberg, who's written the book Psychology of Computer Programming, who worked
others.
with 50 others. He worked with G. McLendon Virginia Satir for many years. I've worked a little with G. McLendon, who's another one of his associates. But, getting that under my belt, and probably by reading. I don't read enough books. I simply don't read enough books. And part of it is...
Do you read less now than you used to read, for example? Has that shifted?
I think so. And maybe it's because I'm coming cynical. I mean, I open a book and I don't learn anything.
And then you stop reading it.
And then I stop reading it. Another person who might be fun for you to interview. I don't know if he calls himself an agile person at all. Do you know Francis Glassborough in the UK?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I think he's currently a professional poker player. But he used to review a lot of books, especially computer science books. And I said, well, you take every book and you read it through to the end, right? And he says, no. He says, if I get partway through the book and I find I'm not being challenged or it's bullshit, I stop reading it and I don't write a review on it. He says, I only write reviews on books that I like and that I finished.
Actually, one of the, for me, well, most is maybe exaggerated, but a very influential book for me was the book, a book called How to Read a Book. And it was one of the I don't know if it was a chapter or just an idea, but one of the things was in there. You don't have to read a book until the end. And for me, it was mind blowing when I read it. It's like, you can stop reading a book. What? And I actually didn't finish the whole book. I read like 90%, but I do remember at that time there was a lot of other stuff going on in my life, and I do remember later, like, did I actually finish? And then I went back and said, no, that last chapter I definitely didn't read. So that was really, it's and the interesting part is when I was young, I read a lot of fiction, and when a fiction book didn't interest me, I stopped. But so-called professional, non-fictional books about agile or whatever, there was a couple of books I tried reading and it didn't work, and I tried again and tried again. I always wanted to finish. And then I read that book, it's like, no, at some point I will still skip and read the, the content pages, and so the whatever that says everything is in there. I might read all the titles of the chapters, but if I don't feel energy anymore for reading, I will stop reading it. I will put it somewhere where if I say, oh, this is interesting for when I need it, I might come back to it. But yeah, it was so liberating for me to realize that that actually is an option, to not read the book to full.
And there's a deeper principle there in terms of, what do I want to become next? Or would you ask me, what do I want to become? Maybe I'll read a book and not like the book, but maybe I find the psychology is all just formulaic, turning the crank, reading signs and plugging them into this model and coming to some concrete conclusion. I'll say, I don't really want to go there either. So, right, it's a matter of having, I think, good judgment. And I think I've received the gift of good judgment most of the time, and having a good sixth sense about, should I continue to follow this idea, or is this going to be a loser? And what happens when I hear about a great new idea in Agile? Okay, then I'll dig in. Then I'll, go on the web. I'll talk with people, right? Have email conversations or call them up. And so,
but what I'm hearing, what you didn't say, but what I'm hearing, people that tried it out or that know something about it.
More than that.
Okay, say more.
So, I mean, I learned C++ from Bjorn Strostrup by working on the compiler with him. I learned model view controller with Trygve Reinskog by extending it to do the volatile part of it. I learned Scrum from Jeff Sutherland, who invented
So
it.
what I'm hearing is you go back to the sources of the people who invented. Yeah, I do the same thing with training courses. Like it's interesting to do a course from someone else, but like no, let's go, yeah, to the people
Yes,
who talk about it. Yeah, I understand.
because the books are usually written by second generation people.
Mm,
And I mean, Jeff Sutherland book, his books are very entertaining, but they're also commercial.
hmm. Right.
And so, the things he might tell you, over dinner are things that are not going to show up in the book.
Right.
So yeah, I've been very lucky to be able to go back to the source. I learned coupling and cohesion directly from Larry Constantine, who invented it. All these things, I've been so fortunate to be able to have access to these people.
Yeah, and especially at the moment that they're still there. I mean, like you talked about Virginia Satir. Okay, you can't work anymore with Virginia because she's no longer there. Who is the people who worked with it? That's why I liked going and working with Jerry Weinberg, because he worked with her, so he knew it. And that because I couldn't go back to the real source, but as close as possible to learn from that. And yeah, that then. But you also talked about university. That's typically not the source. That's people who learned about it. And so, how does that play a role for you?
Well, the main role of university is that I love to corrupt young minds. And I mean, some of the most rewarding experience I had have been as a professor. I was a professor for a couple of years in a kind of a community college outside of Chicago, and had some. I think most people who send their kids there is their problem kids, and they want to get them out of the house because tuition is $20,000 a semester, and so it's these rich people who want to send their kids away. And the computer science program there was really bad. They have some good programs in theater and things like this, but I was in computer science. But I did get some unbelievably brilliant students. And every once in a while, to be able to put a thought in their heads, or to do experiments, and to fight the system. I mean, for teaching object orientation, we were teaching them C++, which would not have been the language I would have chosen to teach them object orientation. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the movie Dead Poets Society?
Yes,
with Robin Williams? So I set up a Dead Poets Society for the students. And one student...
because that you set that up, but in a department that has nothing to do with poetry and anything. So...
Oh, no, but it's not for poetry.
No,
it's for programming languages.
Right. That was my question. So you did set up the same thing, but then for programming languages.
Yeah. So some student would say, "Oh, I'm going to research this programming language, teach a little evening session on it, and people can bring their PCs and we can program in it." And so I was able to bring in, and I never showed up. The students organized this all themselves. I just got them a room.
You organized it and you made sure that they could do it. And did you tell them, "I will not show up," or how did that? Because
I said, "It's your show."
Right.
And they just ran with it. And I mean, it worked. So that was a lot of fun. Again, it gets back to this motivation of being able to have influence. And so, I can have influence without control.
Well,
and that was really...
you have no control at all.
Nope. It was really satisfying.
And satisfying for you because they kept doing this? How did you get any feedback from that? Because you weren't there, so how do you know? And
it just kept going.
Right. And
so I had to trust
that they well, you have to trust that they talk about something about computer programming and not just drinking beer and yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of it had to do with trust. I had a lot of trust of them. But I mean, again, like Jerry Weinberg said, you get together 2 or 3 smart people together in one room and great things will happen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just get out of their way.
That's indeed a very smart advice from Jerry. Let's move to already that last question. Who do you think I should ask next?
Oh, I've mentioned several people. Again, I mean, by the way, I'm honored to be the 191st person in your list of 990 people to be interviewed on Agile.
I published number 202, but the order is really basically the order of other people inviting. I forgot as my preparation for today who invited you. I don't remember anymore. But it's on purpose. What I started out, I think when I created this, I started out with a list of about 200 people that I came up with. By now, indeed, it's 800 and something like that. And of course, if everybody invite, because many people invite 2 or 3, it's exploding. Some people invite the same, but still it's growing very quickly. But yeah, it's growing, but it's interesting. They invite and decide the order, and the people, when they have time available, that changes as well. There are some people who said yes right from the beginning, and we're 2 years later and we still haven't found a date. So that's also a possibility. So that's yeah.
I think who I had in mind when you asked me this question when we first interacted was probably Larry Constantine, exactly. And I think he lives in Madeira,
Larry, right?
Yeah, that's him. And some really interesting guy.
This is some of the books or the things that he wrote on.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed, really interesting guy. But you know him on personally, I think.
Yes.
You had lots of interaction with him. Why should I invite him?
Well, number one, he's been around for a long time, so he's seen a lot. And I think I told you about, he not only has direct knowledge, but he has, if I should call it meta knowledge. I think I told you about this program he ran about 10 or 20 years ago, where he collected people and he did what you're doing. Okay. He interviewed people and made videos of it. And I think his rule was no one he interviewed could be under the age of like 65 or something.
Wow.
So I mean, he collected a lot of insight from his peers and probably a slightly older generation than his. So where we have interacted a lot, and you've given me this embarrassing praise about being broad. I think he's even more so. And I mean, to the point where he has changed career. He's now a science fiction author.
Indeed, yeah,
right?
That's.
And just I think very interesting guy. He and I are currently having some disagreements, which means, okay, we can get together and have some fun. So I told you earlier about this this notion that the way you evolve a system is with high coupling. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, as the father of coupling and cohesion, he says that's bullshit.
Of course,
he's wrong, but I have yet to convince him of that.
Well, that's and what I like so much is, and this is one of the things I really like about you, and I know some other people in the community as well, is that you can still think somebody's wrong and still like a person and still have, like you say, we can have a chat over a beer or whatever and have the kind of discussions. It's not you're wrong and you're completely bullshit and I will never talk with you again. No, it's having that discussions and in a friendly way saying you're wrong and I'm trying to convince you and vice versa.
But you were a big part of that. Because you were one of these evil XP people who don't know up from down and all of this. And then you and I got thrown together in an exercise in some kind of workshop. I don't even remember the venue. And-
I don't. Was it with because I think one of the places was that with oh no, forgot the name.
I can't remember either.
The book. I know the book is somewhere there, but of course I can't find it anymore. Yeah, okay, doesn't matter. It will pop up, of course, after.
But anyhow, I thought, here's this really cool guy who's really civil and treating me with respect and pretty damn clever. Hey, he's an okay guy, you know. And I think that was a very concrete moment. I think ideologically, I like to say I'm open-minded, right? You know, particularly with respect to religion and culture and things like that. But hey, if you talk about TDD, them's fighting words. I mean, that's something you want. Let's talk about real religion. And here you were. Wow, this is really cool. We can learn from each other. So I mean, and I'll never forget that. So you were a big part of that.
I had no idea, and for me, it's when you talked, well, the example you talk, this is how it feels a lot for me with a lot of different things. Like, well, the example of TDD, for example, like I like TDD indeed. I'm one of these people that like to use it, probably even more for myself than for others. But when you just talked about it earlier, I was like, yeah, I can definitely see where you're there. I can definitely, when I hear, oh, there is research about it, it's like, oh, this is interesting. And of course, I know if I look back with the people that I've learned TDD from, they're good at design. So they definitely use a lot more stuff than just TDD. And like with many people, we don't know what we don't know. And we don't always realize that we might use. For me, that's what I said earlier about extreme programming. For me, that was a lot of different things that work together. Pair programming is one of them, one of these things. And that is for me so crucial in a lot of other stuff. And you take away like pair programming in an extreme programming team, a lot of other stuff will fall apart. And that's and is it then pair programming? Is it something else? For me, without the research, it's really hard to know, of course. But yeah, it's like people think, oh, it's I don't know, whatever software or whatever, it has to do with this or that. From who is the story about the 3 stones that the soldiers put 3 stones in the soup, and the 3 stone soup, and then villagers bring on other ingredients, and at the end they take out the soup, the stones out of the soup, and everybody thinks, hey, this is the interesting thing, there is soup with stones. No, it's all the other ingredients, but it started out with the stones, and the stones don't make the soup at all.
This is one of my wife's favorite stories that she uses in consulting and teaching. Stone soup. Yep.
Well, for me, it's a lot of that with a lot of what we're doing. So I had no idea. I was she was so a fan of that thing.
You know, I studied software development processes formally for about 10 years and informally thereafter. I make social network models of them. I go in, I spend time, really dig into their process. And to a first order, it doesn't matter what religion people say they are. They're all doing the same thing. And then they put this overlay religion on it to try to explain to management what they're doing. Now, to a second order, there are some differences. And I think that pair programming is one of those second order things that makes a big, big difference, because there are some groups that pair program and there are some groups that don't. And so if you go under the covers, no, they are not all the same at that level.
That's
but
I think, and the same can be said about the real religions, where we're talking about gods. I mean, a lot of them have similarities and a lot of them have different, and also historically they doing the same mistakes, like trying to convince the rest of the world and murdering people because they have so much better way of living, whatever. And so there is also some similarities on that. And then you see, I don't know, all kinds of people, like you said earlier on in the beginning of the conversations, throwing their favorite book to people, or putting the book on top of, or slamming people with the book to prove that they're right.
And throwing other books in the fire.
And that's the worst thing. Like, so, "Oh, our book is better. Don't read these others." Actually, for me, that's it's one of the things it's interesting. Well, interesting. It's sad that we're living in a world where people start to throw books in the fire anymore. But I do remember when I was a student that learning about some of these things. Oh, these books were banned, and like, oh, that's an interesting list of books to read. So I still remember learning about some books that were now banned or that people tried to ban in the States. It's like, oh, I've never heard about that book. Okay, let's buy it. Let's see if I can do it.
Right.
So that's well, the Streisand effect, I would say. Yeah, that when someone says, okay, I don't want everybody to see about that. That's okay. These are the things to learn about. All right. We've been talking for a very long time. And at the same time, I only know it because I look at the time, because it felt like we're just chatting away. Like I always remember these kind of things. For people that want to connect with you, what's a good way to find you and to talk?
All right. The best way is my email.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to put something in chat, but I mean, you have my email. It's not letting me chat.
I'm typically kind of worried about putting email into show notes and stuff like that.
Okay, then probably connecting with me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
And this should be the LinkedIn.
Right. Oh wait, J Coplien, I think.
I thought I copied it this morning.
I would double check that, because Coplien, that doesn't look right. It should say J Coplien, I think.
I'm going to search it while I'm busy. No, it's Coplien.
Sorry. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll take it. I'll learn something today. All right, that's fine.
It's always interesting to learn something about oneself. I literally copied it this morning, so I was really surprised if it would be wrong. Either my eyes are not good, so I will triple check, but from a distance, looking at my screen with the URL, it should be the right one. Anyway,
I would just set set expectations. I hate interacting over LinkedIn chat. So this is just to make the initial contact, and then we'll have the follow up with email. So either with Zoom or email, follow up. But not, please don't use LinkedIn chat. I hate it.
I completely understand that. Let's not go. You talked earlier about UX design and other kind of things. Well, this is an example of a program that it seems to be moving in the complete wrong direction. Let's not go too much into that. My children are at the age that they're students. Like, okay, it might be interesting to have a connection there. But when I talk with them, it's like, this is a horrible program. Yes, I understand. And at the same time, at this moment, it doesn't feel anything other to connect on a professional level with people. So that's a little bit.
Do you use crossing?
Again,
crossing?
No.
Or Xing? Xing?
Xing, yeah. And I've worked. I should still have an account on that, but I haven't used it in ages.
I have one there too for completeness.
I don't even know if I still have the account. I know that I did it at some point, but it felt like it was mostly on a German site and not many other people in it. And so I indeed sometimes get people asking, some Germans asking me there about that, but that's about it. Anyway, Cope, it's been a wonderful time. I loved spending this Saturday, almost afternoon. It's not the fully afternoon with you, but still, I do hope that we will run into each other again in person, because that still feels a lot better indeed than doing this here.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I'm so happy that because of this tool, we could have still a chat and share war stories. I've learned again so much from you. Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
If you're ever up here in Denmark, you have a place to stay overnight, please drop in.
That's very gentle of you. I would well at this moment I still have 3 students, so I don't have room for people to stay. But definitely, I've said to many people here on the podcast, if you're in Belgium, feel free to join in. We'll have a dinner together or do something.
Yeah, I've been itching to get back to Belgium. I should talk to my old promoter. His birthday, I think, is today. I need to send him a mail.
Well, there is the Belgium link that that is good as well. So
yes.
I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hartelijk dank.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.